Auburn football ranked in the top 10? What?
Well, Zach, I actually just finished crushing some chicken parm, and I am freaking ready to rock and roll.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. It is a Ferg Friday yet again. Justin Ferguson with the Auburn Observer, our guest today. And Jay Ferg, we were kind of talking before we clicked record, but ESPN's new FPI, the Football Power Index, is out for 2022. And Auburn is ranked in the top 10 as their 10th highest team with this metric. And there's a million different metrics, million different ways to measure things. But this specific one liked Auburn, I guess.
Yeah, this is weird. This is just really weird. FPI does not get a good rep among analytics people just because I think if you look at it, like we were talking about it before you started recording, like what goes into it, you know? I look at something like, and this is the crazy thing for me, is that for a long time, I have been a proponent of Bill Connolly's SP+. Okay. Before he went to ESPN. And it's like, okay, well, now you have him at ESPN, and yet you still go with this index. And their FBI, they do this. It's not just college football. They have a basketball one. They have an NFL one. They have all these things that they try to make their own. Problem is, it's just very vague and very opaque. Like we just can't really see what it based on. You can look at what SP Plus breaks down. You can see kind of what the formula or just the FBI is just like, hey, this is what we predict. It's like, oh, okay. Based what goes into the predictions.
Yeah. And I mean, you go to ESPN's website, it's like, all right, what is college FBI? And it says FBI is a predictive rating system designed to measure team strength and project performance going forward. It's like, well, yeah, okay. But it doesn't really say what they're actually looking at. When it says what goes into FBI, it says in the preseason, these components are made up entirely of data from previous seasons, such as returning starters, past performance, recruiting rankings, and coaching tenure. But it's like, well, okay, what's weighed what? What matters more? Yeah. Why is this important to you? And it just doesn't really seem to be there. But whatever's in this mystery formula likes the Tigers this year, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, well, past performance, last year's performance shouldn't have given you top 10, believability. You wouldn't necessarily say that Auburn's recruited at a top 10 level over the last few years as a whole. Brian Harsin, if you talk about coaching. Yeah. I mean, obviously really successful at Boise State, but, it's only been around, Auburn for a year and went, had a losing record. You look at SP Plus. So SP Plus in February, when Connolly released his first round of projections, had Auburn at 25th. That makes a whole lot more sense.
Sure.
And his thing is that it's built also on some of those similar things, but what's weighed. And so one big thing for Connolly in SP Plus is your offense. A lot of times when you look at year-to-year progression or regression in college football, a lot of it comes down to what you return in the passing game. That is the toughest to replace. Running back production is the easiest to replace usually. Offensive line usually sits somewhere in the middle. So as we know, Auburn does not return their starting quarterback from last season and does not return a ton of production at wide receivers. So their offensive rating in the preseason is 45th, which makes a lot of sense. Like that's where you would kind of sit for Auburn right now. No matter if you think if you're high on Auburn, if you're low on Auburn, it's just like, okay, based on what we've seen, this is kind of where you would put them.
Right.
Defensively, Auburn's way higher. I think on defense right now, I'm looking at Auburn is 14th in defense in SP Plus preseason. Well, it makes sense, right? You got Colby Wooden and Derek Hall and Owen Papo, and you bring back a decent amount of guys in the secondary. It's like that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't see where, if you're a top 10 team, that's saying offense, defense, and special teams, that's saying at worst, you're probably looking at Auburn being top 15 on offense. It's just things can happen. It's just there would have to be a lot of things that would click and Auburn to be better than expected for it to do that. And so basing that off of predictions, it's I don't know what kind of projections you're really going off of there, because like you said, returning production doesn't really stack up. Last year's record doesn't really stack up. And recruiting, look, Auburn is recruiting at a pretty good level in the last 4 years, but it's not top 10. It's not what you would expect year in and year out.
Yeah. So it's just like, what are they looking at? But, at 1, it's Alabama. That makes sense. Ohio State at 2, Georgia at 3, Clemson at 4, Notre Dame at 5. I don't think anybody's questioning any of that. Texas is 6, Michigan 7, Oklahoma 8, which all of these are just like cream of the crop programs right now. And then 9 is Pitt, the Pitt Panthers, which, they had a good season last year with Kenny Pickett, but he's gone.
Yeah, they must be really buying high on Keaton Slovis, I guess.
I guess so. And, maybe he checks the boxes and whatever this formula is that we don't know. But
if I remember correctly, FPI last year, it was either last year or 2 years ago. I think it might have been last year. Had Mississippi State preseason top 10, and they finished 7-6. So like there's something that's overrating in FPI, that's overrating conference. Maybe you look at the FPI and the preseason. It's like, yeah, Alabama, Georgia, you would expect it, but like LSU's right after Auburn at number 11. Okay, right. LSU is going to be a different story. Like LSU has talent. They're going to, reload. They got a really good coach, but yeah, it's like, can you really base it? And meanwhile, A&M, the darling of the preseason, is 14.
How are they 14th?
Right. Ole Miss. A lot of people are high on Ole Miss again this year. So you're back behind those two teams. It's just like, I don't see it. I don't see it. And it's just like on predictions. They say these predictions, these simulations. It's like, all right, well, what is the data you're basing that off of? Because predictions and simulations, that's one thing. But if you're talking about, a thing like SP Plus or some of these other ratings, these advanced analytics that you see elsewhere, it's like, okay, this is just hard. This is just the data says, right? And you come up with a formula that says, if you plug in these recruiting rankings and this returning talent and this, the past performances, boom, here it spits it out. If you're plugging it in and then you're running like simulations, it's like you're starting to you're kind of starting to go away from like the actual data, and then it starts going to like, oh, well, what if, which is what ESPN does a lot with a lot of these things. They're very big on like they have one in the NFL. They have one in all these other sports too. And so it's based off, obviously ESPN has some sort of prediction simulation engine. They have like a simulation engine of some kind that they, I guess, paid a lot of money for, and they really want to get a lot of use out of, I would think. I guess so. They even got they were the ones that started passer rating, right? Or QBR. Which one was it? They have their own QBR. They have a 0 to 100 QBR, which is different. Like it's one of the funnier things. I had an editor at The Athletic that would he taught this to me one time. It's like, there's quarterback rating, quarterback efficiency, passer rating. All of them mean the same thing. Just make sure you know what you're talking about, the most stuff. And so I like to say, like in college, I like to say passing efficiency, because if you say quarterback rating, ESPN tried to buy basically they basically want to make you think that they own quarterback rating, even though that's a stat that's been around for a long, long time. So efficiency is a better way to say it, because if you look at rating, then it starts getting into like what PFF does with their own rating system, and it's like, yeah, there's some subjective stuff in there that like, the more we can get to like hard objective, this is what it looks like, and project off of that. That seems a lot better to me than saying like we ran this engine a bunch of times, like we plugged it into Madden and simulated it a ton of times. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, we set both teams to like computer controlled, and we just watched them 20,000 times. Right. Justin Ferguson, our guest. All right, we try to make the case to see if this could be anywhere close to legitimate in just a moment. But I'll tell you about our friends at Built Bar. Built Bar is the protein bar that looks and tastes like a candy bar. They've got a ton of different flavors over at built.com. You can see all the nutritional information, the ingredients, and everything you need to know about what you'll be putting into your body, because Built cares about that. They've also got other products like Built Boost, which is this powdery drink that you can mix in your water, kind of give you energy throughout the day. Built Puffs are these new protein-infused marshmallows. They're absolutely delicious. Check it all out at built.com. And whatever you buy, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off. That is at built.com. Jay Ferg, what's going on with the Observer these days, my friend?
Yeah, so this week we did something I did last year, and I can't remember if I ever did this at The Athletic, but I do this thing after spring ball where I write something, a thought of some kind, on every single scholarship player that went through spring ball. So we did offense on Tuesday, defense on Wednesday. You can look at it. If you have any like question or like, hey, what did this guy do during spring? Or what do you think about this guy? Like, you can literally go up and I wrote a few sentences on everybody there. So that was this week. Mailbag up on Friday. We did multiple podcasts this week. By the time you're listening to this, Auburn Gymnastics will already have gone through the Elite Eight in gymnastics, but we had Justin Leon to talk about that. We did a basketball podcast on Thursday. We did a football heavy 8-day recap on Sunday. So there's been a whole lot of stuff going on. And yeah, we'll roll that into next week, trying to get a little bit more creative. It's the off season.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Justin Lee, I mean, what a job covering that team this season.
Nobody better. Nobody better.
He knocked it out of the park. He was incredible. He was incredible. And even covering SUNY throughout the Olympics too. I mean, he just kind of kept that going. So prop to him and thank you to him for doing that. All right. So let's try to make the case for Auburn where this ranking makes sense. Let's just try to do it. How does Auburn become a top 10 team this season? It all comes down to the offense, right?
Yes. Yeah. It all comes down to the offense. Offense is what makes you an elite team in college football. If you have an elite defense and have an offense that can make some good plays and kind of keep it moving, you could be like 2019 Auburn, which is the closest example we've seen. And like SP Plus and so things, that was a top 10 team, right? You know, they might not have been top 10 by the end of the year in terms of rankings, but like human rankings, but like efficiency wise, they were pretty much up there. Yeah. It's harder to kind of see that with this defense just because like there's no Derek Brown. Like there's no like one guy where you can be like that is. Now, do I think Colby Wooden? Do I think Derek Hall? Do I think those guys like that could have the potential to be all SEC players? Absolutely. I really like Colby Wooden a lot. Like it wouldn't shock me if Colby Wooden caught fire this season and we talk about him as a guy who gets All-American love. It wouldn't shock me. Now he's going to have a lot of work to get to that point.
Right.
But the advanced numbers last year loved him. For an interior lineman, few players in college football stopped the run and rushed the passer as well as he did. Yeah. But, you know, you don't really have that kind of defining, like, you know, superstar kind of player.
Could Owen do that? Could Owen reach that level?
Could. A little different for linebackers, especially one like him, who, you know, isn't necessarily a pass rusher, but like, yeah. And the thing with Owen is like, can he get back to 100%? Can he get back to what he was, you know, beforehand? But it all comes down to offense, really. It all comes down to, you know, how much this offense can kind of click. And so I think the big thing is whoever starts at quarterback for Auburn, whoever it is, you can lay any of the options out there. You can throw all four of them out there. I don't care. That one clicks and is like instant success. And you're looking at a guy who catches like first month of the season, 5 straight home games, you know, gets on a hot streak, and then they carry that in the rest. It starts with that. Now, do I think this offense is going to build itself around Tank Bigsby and getting the ball to him? Sure. Do I think whoever clicks at quarterback is going to be dependent on guys stepping up at wide receiver? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's going to come down to, can the quarterback win you football games and win some games that you're not necessarily expected to win? I think if you look on paper this season for Auburn, the games, well, you would say what? They're like 3 games that they are clearly not, like, you know, not even close to a toss-up, probably. You'd say Georgia, Alabama.
Probably. Alabama.
Yeah, and then like A&M at home. You get A&M at home this year, but like a lot of people are really high on A&M. You've got 2 there. Like, so like basically to get to a top 10 team, you're talking 9-10 wins in the regular season. You're talking competitive losses if you have them to the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. That's what it would have to take. Is that impossible? No, not at all. But a lot would have to go right, and it starts on an offense that just doesn't return a lot of passing game talent and has questions with some of the guys that they do bring back, especially on the offensive line.
Right. And something I really like about this ESPN FPI, so they have Auburn's projected win-loss, 7.4 wins, 4.6 losses, and they say it's a 91.9% chance that Auburn gets 6 wins, which is relevant right now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that everyone is kind of saying Auburn's going to go 2-6 or 1-7 in the SEC, and, you know, that may not be enough to get you there if that's the case. So,
right.
You know, 91% to get 6 wins. I think that would exceed a lot of people's expectations as far as folks outside of Auburn.
Yeah, it obviously thinks a lot higher of Auburn than it does Arkansas. That is a home game this year, so that would be a plus. Obviously, thinks a lot higher of Auburn than Mississippi State. That's a road game, but so there's a couple that are right off the bat, and then you have LSU, A&M, and Ole Miss in that ballpark with you. You do get LSU and A&M at home. You don't get Ole Miss at home. So, you can kind of see where, if you say, well, if Auburn wins most of their toss-ups at home and, takes care of business at home, you can get the 7 wins that way. You can get 8 wins that way. But I think it's just the thing with Auburn this year is that they are at a spot where, there's so much, the gap between 4-8 and 8-4 is thin. It's thin. There's you could see a lot of things that kind of make or break this season. This is, this team does not have a super steady floor because it's just okay, you won just 6 games last season. You lost your final 5. And you would say that the talent is not as good as it was last season on the whole across the board. Now, we know that talent and what we see, on paper doesn't always translate to what happens on the field, obviously. Right. And I think if you have a coach that is dead set on saying we're going to exceed expectations, we're going to try to outwork people, we're going to out scheme people, we're going to do all these things. This is going to be the test for it. This is going to be it because it's a little bit more of your guys, or at least the guys who are still around have bought into the system, and it's going to be a test of you did not recruit at a time. You don't recruit at a level of an Alabama or a Georgia or Texas A&M. What does it look like? What does it look like when you have these games this season? So that's going to be it's going to be a big test. It's going to be, I think, the kind of real barometer of what Brian Harsin is selling.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I don't know. I can talk myself into it. And it sounds like you can too. Hey, today's show brought to you by betonline.net. They are your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's playoffs for the NBA. MLB is starting. And you can get Auburn at some pretty decent odds to win the college baseball World Series if you're feeling excited about that. So check that all out at BetOnline, where the game starts. Justin Ferguson, our guest today, got you for a few more minutes. I posed this question earlier in the week to Mike G on the War Report, but if you had to pick 3 SEC games that you feel most confident that Auburn could win this season to exceed that 2-6 mark that everybody's throwing out there, I think the first two, the first one is easy, right? I think Missouri, the first SEC game, is kind of what a lot of people would go to. Would you start there, I would assume?
I would say Missouri at home. I would say Arkansas at home. And I would say State on the road would probably be your best bets. LSU is going to be super, super talented. A&M super talented. Ole Miss is going to be a tough matchup away from home. You got Georgia and you got Alabama.
What is it about Mississippi State that makes you comfortable with that?
It's just you're not playing against a team that has a really high talent level compared to you. I think State obviously has a system, and what they try to do gives people trouble. It obviously gave Auburn a lot of trouble last season in the second half.
Right.
But yeah, it's just that if you're looking at if you're Auburn and there's so many question marks about you this season, and there's a lot that's got to click for you to have a good year. If you're trying to talk yourself into, okay, what does it look like? What works? I think the baseline is say, okay, go to the teams that you have more talent than. On paper, you have more talent than Missouri, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, that's clear, and that's in recruiting. You can point to that. Then it just comes down to matchups and development and all that fun stuff. The fact that you get Arkansas and Missouri at home helps. State, it's just that's one of those teams. It's they're never going to be a team that has elite talent across the board, but they try to overcome it with their system, especially now with Mike Leach. So those would be the 3 that kind of stand out as if you're wanting to have a good season, if you're wanting to take a step forward, those are the ones you must have.
Yeah. I don't know mine was Missouri at home, LSU at home, and Arkansas at home. I think LSU may peak later in the season. I mean, there's a lot of changing parts going on down there.
Yeah.
I think Auburn got them at a good time of the year. And the fact that it's injured in her stadium, I think helps you a ton too.
Definitely.
But yeah, I have paused the game and start Afghanistan. I just have I don't know if it's because of what happened at the second half of last year. I mean, that's clearly not relevant to what's going to happen this year, but
yeah,
I think there's a mental block there in my brain for some reason.
Sure. I mean, and again, remember Auburn was cruising in that game. Like they had shown
the first half was like their best offensive half up to that point. It's like, oh, they're starting to figure it out a little bit.
Yeah, and then Bo Nix's injury definitely didn't help them.
Right.
But the defense melted down, and it's funny because it's like that's the same defense that played lights out against Alabama a few weeks later. Like
crazy.
It's college football. It's 18 to 21-year-olds. They're not going to be super consistent every time. That's the one thing, and I see this all the time, and I think about it. You went through this in college basketball as well, but it's in college football. How many times you watch NFL and the NBA and dudes have off nights, teams have like really weird off performances, and it's like it happens all the time. And those guys are getting paid millions and millions of dollars to do that.
Right.
And they've been doing this as their job for a while. Yeah. So it's the thing. It's like it's unpredictable. And like when you talk about this team coming up this season, it's like on paper, yeah, a lot's got to go right for Auburn to take a step forward, be better than they were last year. It's also Auburn, right? It's also historically the least predictable team in America.
Right.
So, if you want to bank on that's what I tell people all the time, man. It's not just because I write a newsletter and have a podcast that people have to pay to listen to. It's like the offseason, like if you want to find reasons to be optimistic, hold on to that. Cling on to it.
You can do it.
Like
yeah.
that is, that this is the time for that, right? You'll have time to be angry and angsty in the season, like when the stuff actually happens. But if you want to be optimistic and you want to be hopeful, there are pieces where you could say, hey, Auburn plays awesome defense this season, runs the ball well, takes care of the ball with their passing game. Guys develop over time. They hit the games at the right time. Yeah, they can improve from last season. Like there's a fair way to go about it. But there's also the other thing to say, man, this thing could go down quick if things get out of bounds early.
I mean, I think we'll know after Penn State at home, Missouri at home, LSU at home. You'll probably know which way it's going after those 3 games.
Probably so. Like it would be really hard for me to see Auburn go through that stretch and not look good and say, okay, well, the back half will be better. The time where you play Georgia and Alabama away from home, that'll be to
Mississippi twice, and then you play.
Hey, you gotta go to Ole Miss. Like, yeah, that'll be better. You'll figure it out then. It's like
totally right.
Whew, yeah, that'll be a lot tougher.
Yep. Jay Ferg, thank you for your time as always, brother. One more time, how can people find you, hear you, support you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, AuburnObserver.com. It's $6 a month or $60 a year to get on board with a subscription. You can get a free trial if you want to check it out. Newsletters, podcast, 3 or 4 times a week. Auburn football, men's basketball. Find it all there.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Makes the offseason a lot more bearable getting those newsletters every few days there. All right, we'll be back on Monday to recap everything that happened over the weekend right here on Locked On Auburn. See ya.